This is Spare Time Repair, and this is another Makita site radio. It's different to the last one I looked at. This one is the DMR104. It's got a different fault as well. This one has a problem with the volume. I've got the power supply this time, which is very helpful. Although it had a bit of a problem below the strain relief here. I've had to tape up some exposed wires which were threatening to short together, but we might look at that later. When you turn it on, the volume is stuck on full, and the volume knob, although it's nice and clicky, appears to be okay, and the center select function seems to work too, but it doesn't do anything. And it's always on at full volume, so I'm only going to demonstrate this briefly because obviously it's going to be pretty annoying. But here we go. Oh, it's never done that before. There's no volume this time. Every time I've turned it on before, it's been on maximum. Let's see what the volume knob does now. Well, it's sort of trying to change but doesn't. But you can see it's on full. And it looks like it's coming down, but it goes back to full again. But we can't actually hear anything.
50 broadband with no setup fee, then £32.50 a month.
Okay, now you get the idea. Maybe it just wasn't tuned in, but yeah, you can see you either get all or nothing, and the volume knob is not making any difference. So like the DMR115 I looked at before, this has got 4 hex screws on the front, and if you can hear drum and bass in the background, that's from my inconsiderate neighbours, so I apologise for that. There are some of those deep recessed screws here and here, so perhaps we need to undo those as well. I'm going to assume they're the same as in the other radio, which were T15. No, that's not working at all. Oh, well, I can see by looking in there that it's an ordinary Phillips screw. Clearly Makita are less concerned with you getting into this one than they were the other. So I'm going to try a PH1. Change to a PH2. It feels like it's somewhere in between, but it is just about biting. There it is. Yep. I can't decide whether it's a 1 or a 2, but let's grab that one as well. And already the front is now coming off. So again, we've got various connectors to disconnect. It may just be easier to unscrew this board from the front. I think whatever happens, we're going to be tethered by this aerial cable which is soldered at both ends. Okay, we do now have access. This is the PCB on for the volume control, which has a little socket. Right, that's disconnected, so if I remove the volume knob, it should just pull off. Fastening nut. Let's just get this whole thing out of the way because it's just far too big. So this is clearly the culprit. Well, almost certainly. It does, as I say, it does seem to click around nicely. Looks like it's socketed here, but it's actually soldered onto the board. Well, I think we need to get the multimeter on this and see what's going on. Well, it was difficult to probe, so what I've done is to put a small wire into each of the 4 holes in the plug, which obviously relate to these connections, and I can't get anything out of it. So no matter what wires I connect together, well, that's measuring a press, but nothing when I turn it. That's not measuring a press, and nothing when I turn it. That's not doing anything either. I mean, it's got to be doing something to instruct the PCB that this is connected to act upon it. So I think I'm going to have to desolder this switch and pull it apart. Well, annoyingly, it's kind of caged in. I thought you'd better bend these clips over on the side, but they go right the way round, and they're splayed out on the ends here, which is what's holding it in. Okay, that half's undone. Here we go. So as you'd expect, we've got these wipers, and they're going around on this track. Okay. It's this little piece of plastic on a spring that's creating the click, and the click for the push button selection is a dome switch inside here, but we know that works, so we're not worried about that. Looks like one of the wipers, you see the one nearest my finger here, the end is broken off. So this one comes to the end of the screwdriver, and this one is shorter. These two are the same. It's a bit black there as well, so maybe there's been some arcing there. But that explains why it's not working, and I don't think that's going to be repairable. So I need to see whether I can get another one of these. So initially I assumed that that the wipers were joined together. And so I thought, well, why would it not work with only one of them? Because the segments are shared by both. But after probing it, these outer wipers are connected to these pins, and the two inner wipers are connected to the center pin. Now it makes sense because we've got no connection between this wiper and this pin when it's in operation, because this wiper is not touching the segments where it should do. It's slightly difficult to demonstrate that, but so here's the outer wiper. It's connected to there, but not there. And the inner wiper is connected to there, but not there. And same with this one. Not the outside. And this one, but not the inside. I think I've found one of the wiper feet. There it is, on the end of my finger. So it's hard to tell from the alignment, but I wonder if the inner wiper goes around the inside where there's a constant contact, and the outer wiper goes on these segments where it's interrupted. And that's what creates the pulse to tell it which direction you're turning the volume. Possibilities are to bend this wiper up so that it's the same height as this one, but then they're not going to be parallel, and I don't know whether that will make a difference. Also, these wipers should have like a hook on the end, which would reduce the wear on the pads. So I'm not sure it's a good idea just to have it running on these sharp ends here. Another thing I considered was putting a blob of solder on the end here, which would be rounded and both bring it up parallel with this. I don't know how long that would last, but it might work. Trouble is, solder is very soft, so it would wear away quickly. I might try that if I can't think of anything else. Well, I suddenly had a thought, and instead of searching for the switch on its own, I entered this number into the search engine, and you can get the whole unit. Excuse the fingerprints. Encoder assembly for BMR104, obviously the better solution. So I think I'm going to order one of those and do it properly. It's always my preference to try to repair the existing unit rather than order spare parts, but I think in this case any kind of repair is not going to be reliable long term, even if it does work initially. It does say for BMR104 when mine's a DMR104, but it does look identical. Okay, that's ordered, should be here next week, but just because I'm curious, I've bent up the remainder of that wiper to bring it level with the other one, and I'm going to reassemble it and see if this does work. Obviously I'm going to swap it out anyway, but just to see if a repair is possible. Okay, that's back together, so let's solder it up. I do appreciate that this is a fairly pointless exercise. So that plugs in here. I'm not going to fasten all the screws because they'll only have to come out again. Okay, I'm going to plug the power back in.
Being there. Merry Christmas, Mum, Joe and Eva. With amazing deal.
No, that did not work. Okay, I'll just have to wait for my new part to arrive. A few days have passed and the new encoder has arrived. Looks identical. The new ones on the left, they're exactly the same part number, which is encouraging. The exact orientation isn't critical. Just want to get a couple of screws in to secure it before I connect the encoder. Okay, it's in. I suppose we should test it before I do up any more screws. Yep. definitely working now. It's just these two long screws.
But if you love your Christmas and you need more, there is Greatest Hits Radio Christmas, which alongside our other premium stations is available now.
Let's try 103.9, which should be Radio Suffolk. It's not great reception, but yep. The push functionality is working as well. I mentioned that the power transformer wasn't in great shape, and this is how I found it. Exposed copper on both wires, and also here. And the problem is this ferrite block, so I can't, it's not just a case of shortening the cable. If I can somehow get inside this plug top. So I'm not sure what's going to be best here. Actually, the plug is half coming apart already, so it probably wouldn't be a bad thing to separate this and see what the connections are like. See if we can get a screwdriver in here. It's obviously not meant to come apart. The joints are glued by the look of it. But that was surprisingly easy. Okay, so we've got this potting compound we can easily remove. I just wonder whether I can remove this block somehow. I mean, how necessary is the ferrite block? Is it just precautionary? So these are our two connections. I might see if I can cut this strain relief in half and potentially glue it back together afterwards. So I need to remember that is the negative nearest that resistor. I've got Tiffany in my head now after testing that radio. Okay, managed to salvage that fairly well. And yeah, this clearly wasn't going to last much longer. The negative side is hanging on by a couple of strands. So I don't think I can shorten it by cutting it here, because it's just not going to give me enough. So I need a fair bit of length. What I think I'm going to do is cut it here, see if it works okay without the ferrite beads, and if it doesn't, I can always try to cut these off and insert them lower down the cord later. So I'm going to cut that as close as possible to the end. And we're going to need to strip it to about here. So I'm just going to tin these up. Here we go. It drops into that slot. Force these out of the way. Alright, I think that will glue up nicely. I decided I'm going to use hot glue just in case I need to get back inside again, because super glue would be a pain. This is a lot messier though. Let's have a quick try at getting this apart. Well, that was a faff, and I don't know why I actually thought this would be in two halves and you could clamp it on afterwards, but of course it's a core and the wire needs to do a couple of loops through it. Which actually new. I've seen it before, but I don't know why it didn't occur to me. So these are definitely not retrofittable. So hopefully there are no issues with the reception. But if you've ever wondered what's inside one of these ferrite bead things, well, that's it. Right, let's see how we're doing.
I remember being taught at the Subsurface College about how Britain was inevitably going to become a sort of new Portugal.
Well, it seems okay to me. Well, the user of this mainly uses the battery anyway, so I think I'm going to leave it at that, call it a fix, and if he complains of any reception issues, I will look at it again. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.